I would like to welcome Mr. Henk Mulder, Head of Digital Cargo at IATA, and Mr. Henning Schleyerbach, CIO of the Digital Container Shipping Association, the DCSA. Henk, you might know from last year, he will get his time. But first of all, Henning, not everybody knows about DCSA. What's your reason of existence? What's your mission?
Yeah, let me try. So first and foremost, big thanks to having me here. And let me give you a little bit of a background about DCSA. So we have been founded around about 5 years ago. Just had our 5-year anniversary. We are a non-for-profit, founded by 9 of the top 10 container shipping lines. And our reason to exist is that they said we need to collaborate to get the data flowing in containerized shipping in a smarter way than it actually still is, to be honest. Yeah? So there was seen a need to come together and to collaborate in terms of defining data standards or formats to exchange data in a smarter way than EDI, what we have today. And that should drive customer experience. So this is why I'm happy that I'm here, because you all should benefit from it. And you probably need Christian and his software to get the value out of our standards. But then there's also, of course, asset productivity, which our members were looking for. So can we improve asset productivity of the containers or the vessels? And last but not least, sustainability. So we also try to work towards a greener future. And I personally believe that there's, of course, a lot in propulsion or engine technologies that you can apply, but these hardware investments always take many years, and nobody knows what is the best solution. If you go for digital solutions, you can maybe save, I don't know, only 2 or 3 or 5% of the emissions, but you can test it in a small testbed, and you can have the benefits within months or years.
Okay, Thank you very much. Very interesting. Henk, your second time here. You're not you, but IATA, the organization, was founded in 1945, so you just turned 79. Next year will be, not you, but
almost.
And I like to call I think most people here know what IATA is and what it does, and they're from the carrier side, of course. My quip is already, and Brandon, the head of cargo at IATA, he hates me for this. I tell them it's the biggest physical bookstore on earth, or still profits from selling books. But you changed this with ONE Record. Previously, we, the software providers or the forwarders, were required to purchase standards from you, and you put that out into the open and for free. Why, and how difficult was it to overcome the internal policy at IATA?
So you're quite right. In fact, books are our revenue. Yeah. And the reason we charge for it is because there's a lot of work that goes into it. So there's a reason for it, but it feels wrong, right? I think that my history isn't, although I spent a lot of time at IATA, I come from a very different area. I started my career at CERN when we developed the World Wide Web, and one of the reasons why it succeeded was because it was open. And so I've always carried that lesson with me when I came to IATA, and when we decided to develop ONE Record, I knew it had to be open, it had to be free. We couldn't charge $1,000 for that because it would stifle the growth of it. And so how difficult was that? It was very easy because I didn't tell anyone. And so I was senior enough to get away with that, so we just put it out on GitHub. And by the time people would find out that I'd done that, it was too late. It was out there. So then I justified it, and nobody has challenged it since. And now it's too late. It's there.
Yeah, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Well, I haven't even bothered with that. It's just...
This is, Henning, the DCSA started out as, well, as you said, it's a non-profit. It was founded by, or the members associations are the carriers, and everything from the beginning was openly developed in GitHub and open source, and no charge for it. Why? Because, I mean, I know that management always says, well, show me the ROI, show me the business model, and you don't seem to have one in that sense.
Yes and no. So I mean, you have to follow the value in the end. And we also have discussions right now if we should launch, I don't know, product, some type of middleware to gain a bit independence from the membership fees, because it can be quite a burden to be dependent of only 9 container shipping lines. But if you look at the revenue or the profit we can make with that, that is maybe a few million a year. Yeah? Okay, worse to gain some independence, but if you look at the value case for the standardized ecosystem, and if you imagine that, I don't know, we would have just-in-time port calls for all 450 ports worldwide with all the vessels, you immediately get billions of dollars of savings. So, and emission savings and cost savings, because you can optimize your fuel consumption. If you add the emission trading schemes of the future, fuel prices are going to go up. The business case is only going to get better. So, such a small organization as we are right now, with only 55 people, could never create or unlock so much value if it's not through being an enabler of an ecosystem. And I think this is what you tried with ONE Record as well, or what you're doing with ONE Record as well. So there is a higher purpose, let's say, and people pay us by adopting our standards and by taking advantage of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So both your members are, I think, exclusively, for you it's exclusively carriers. IATA, you can also become only a full member if you're an air carrier, right?
Yes, only air carriers, international air carriers.
International air carriers,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we have mostly forwarders in the audience. To both of you, what's your message to them?
If I start, for me the message is clear, is that we obviously work with air carriers because these are our members, and one advantage is there's only a few hundred of them. And so we can actually connect with each and every carrier and give them the message. Now, what is the message? The message is that the systems that have worked really well until today, they won't work in the future. We've all seen what's happening on the AI front. People are getting a bit disappointed now with AI, but it's doing amazing things. And so we are now in an economy which is going to be data-driven 100%. The tools will be data-driven. AI will be necessary. The existing systems cannot supply the data. It's impossible. It's too disconnected. And although the processes work, you will never get any benefits from your data with the existing system. And so we've been telling this to the airlines, and we've been telling the airlines, please tell the forwarders. We say to Riege, please tell the forwarders. We say to our other partners, please tell the forwarders. Why? Because you're all part of the same supply chain. You know, carriers alone can't do anything. And so we need events like this, and we need people like you to I wouldn't say follow, but to also seek that opportunity and work on your ability to use the data that you already have, that you're creating, that you're receiving, that you're passing on for your own opportunity, to optimize your freight flows, to optimize your revenues. It's something that is going to make the difference between success and not in the years to come. And so that's my message, is this is not an airline thing. This is an economical development that we all have to follow.
Yeah, if I might want to add, I mean, we have been visiting your conferences, your events for a long time already, and it's we see it as our mission to represent the people here in the audience, because they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to spend at your very interesting and fruitful events. So we feel kind of like a speaker for the smaller, because the big guys are always present at your.
That's correct, and but that's why it's so important to have solution providers participating. And you're not the only one. We work with many solution providers, and but this is absolutely key. Without that, in fact, we have a deadline coming up in 2026, and I always say the reason we're going to make the deadline is not because the airlines will be ready; it's because the solution providers will be ready. Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah, true. Henning, what's your message to the audience?
Maybe first and foremost, don't underestimate your influence that you have by being an important customer of the carriers, and I think that's the same for the airlines as for the carriers. So what I painfully learned is these companies don't understand themselves. So talking now about our members, I'm mindful of that, but they don't understand themselves as IT companies. Yeah, well, Riege certainly is. So IT is a necessary evil for a carrier. You do it to keep your cost and your risk on a bearable level, and otherwise it's a pain in the ass because it's always too expensive, and you calculate the IT cost per TEU shipped, and then you need to get this down by 50 cents, and then you are a successful CIO. So not really by inventing a business model that may create 30% of your revenue in 10 years, which is what an IT company would do. And what we also hear from them, even if they support us developing standards, is that their own business teams sometimes don't understand it and don't let them implement. And they say, as long as the customers don't ask for it, it may be good, but maybe not. Yeah? So please ask for it, because what we tell them is you need it. Yeah? And they may not be talking to the right people. So by raising your voice, either when you are buying or when you are forming a community like here, you can have some superpowers. Yeah? So try to understand the value. There is value. I'm convinced there is value also for you guys. And then demand it when you are, I don't know, creating a new or asking for a new tender or whatever it is, making your new annual negotiations. And the other thing I think also maybe important, but it is a very traditional industry. I'm now more talking about the shipping industry. Yeah. I don't know how it is in the airline industry, but these guys always claim that they have been there since at least 5,000 years. Yeah? And the container is still new. Yeah? So don't come me with your modern AI stuff. Yeah? So it will come or it will go. However, they have been able to operate quite significant time, more or less undercover, in the let's say unnoticed, and this has changed through COVID. So we had the Ever Given event, we had the Baltimore Bridge collapse, and so supply chains and supply chain resilience is more a thing that is being discussed in normal public media, and that is not always good, and it has the risk to be regulated. Mm-hmm. And that's something that the carriers are very mindful of, and we are discussing with our board, for instance. And that's again something where we say DCSA can be a leverage for them to show that they want to shape and want to improve, because the customer experience that they are providing these days is not what you would expect.
That is
maybe I can add to that another anecdote. We often say that in air transport there's still a lot of paper, and that we carry something like 70 747s full of paper every year. What we don't say is that at least half of that is documentation for maritime transport. Because they're not putting the paper on the ships.
Yeah.
They put them in the airplane.
Otherwise they wouldn't be faster. They need to arrive on time. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. Needless to say, but digital trade is one of our big initiatives where we're really trying to enable paperless trade. And that's not only the electronic bill of lading, it's also everything that travels along. So it could be certificates of origin or DG certificates. So you don't gain a lot if you have an EBL and all the rest is still in the pouch of paper traveling along.
Interesting. Let me do a follow-up. I mean, you said, okay, we have a digital standard and we have track and trace from the carriers, but this is not new. This is has been there for 30 years by third-party providers who claim to have unified interfaces into the carriers where I can which our customers are using today, and where I often hear quips like, yeah, the data is not correct, or it's not enough and it's too expensive. So were you founded for to get rid of this, or what's the motivation? Because you could say, well, it's all there, just use it.
I mean, Henk and I, we once wrote a chapter in a book about maritime informatics, why private sector associations can make sense, where you don't want to wait for IMO or a European Commission or FMC to regulate, but it's a matter that is commercially based, let's say, and there's mostly commercial interest, so let's leave the customs part outside. But you can benefit, or the ecosystem could benefit from better data sharing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is an area where in the end, none of even of the big players alone can really be successful. It only works if you join forces, and this is what IATA is doing successfully since many years, what we are trying as well. When I started working, I worked for Hapag-Lloyd 20 years before I joined DCSA. In my job interview, 1998, the guy was talking to me about EDI intensively, and I had no clue what it was. Yeah, so I had to look it up. He mentioned the term EDI probably 40 times, and I said, okay, that must be something very interesting. But what is it? And now we are 25 years further down the road. So you will not find engineers anymore that can build it. It is all kind of custom made, so it takes a few weeks. You need to test it. You need to follow releases, which is again a burden. Yeah, and with Riege software, you can probably bundle that for all your clients. But for the larger ones, it's repeated effort that happens every time on the API, on the consumer side and on the sender side. And it's not real time. Yeah? So if you want to draw it on a map, where is the box? If you want to, I mean, imagine now Hapag is and then other carriers are equipping all their dry containers with IoT devices. How many EDI messages do you want to send? So it's probably going to be 10, 20, 30 times the amount of messages. So the normal systems will not be able to handle it. And also, hey, who cares about the trace that a container had over the last 24 hours? Yeah, as long as you know where it is and when it will arrive, this is what matters. Yeah? So, and these are areas where API technology can really provide benefits. And we also believe we need to get away from everybody trying to keep a copy of what happened to the container in their own system. So if the line breaks, then at least I have all the data in my own systems to I know where I can get the data whenever I need it.
Yeah, that changed over the last years. I mean, at the beginning, I know the internet from 1992. Everybody was like, yeah, that's a fad, and it's a bit different. And you need to store every copy on your own PC. And I mean, nowadays we have devices which do not store everything here, but they store it in the cloud. And thank you very much. And I can query any time because its networks are more stable, and it has really proven like that. Okay, thank you. I'm wearing a shirt from 2022, and I think, Henk, last time you were with us in Düsseldorf, we talked a little bit about the hackathons that you organized, and in 2022, in June, it was freaking cold. I remember there was like 5 degrees. Sure. We had a hackathon in Amsterdam, and that was, interestingly enough, that was sponsored by the Digital Container Shipping Association. So it's an airline event, sponsored by an ocean, or by a company, or not a company, sorry, by a non-profit catering to the ocean industry. Why did you decide to sponsor this event?
So it was actually the second one that we did together. So we were not big enough to do one alone, and we also wanted to highlight that our standards are, of course, intermodal. So DCSA is focusing on everything that everything that happens while the cargo is in a container. So we don't follow parcels or pallets or whatever. Yeah, we don't follow ULDs, but it is intermodal to the extent that it goes from the truck to the rail. So a lot of the stuff we saw in the movie is covered by our standards. Everything that happens in the airline is covered by the ONE Record standards. And we said, could be quite interesting to do that together and also see where we can benefit from learnings, from experiences that one has made. And if I look around here, it would be one of my questions. So I can assume, or I assume many of you have departments, air freight and sea freight departments that are maybe in different rooms, but follow completely different procedures. So that's, of course, interesting for us. Where is it reasonable? Where is it unreasonable? So that we can learn from that and get inspiration.
What was your remembrance of the event and the cooperation? So
one of the reasons we did is that interoperability between transport modes, but also between different parties of the supply chain is key in everything we discuss. I mean, the old EDI systems cannot do that, as you earlier said. And so we really wanted to put that to the test and say, what happens if you put DCSA and IATA together, and if you have members from DCSA, their IT teams and business teams with members from the airlines. And what really surprised me was that as much as, as you said, forwarders may have separate departments that don't talk to each other, we may have separate organizations that don't talk as much as they could. When we put the IT teams together, they spoke exactly the same language. It was quite funny. They understood all the bits about loading and schedules and the status updates. They used slightly different words, but being IT people, they could see through that. And so we found that airline IT departments were implementing the maritime standards, the DCSA standards, without a problem. And so it turns out that the the interoperability that we need is very much facilitated by these organizations and these standards, something that we have been pushing for a long time. And it doesn't stop at maritime and air. It also is rail and road, and it's customs around the world. And then we have all these different territories like the EU and elsewhere that have their own idea about things. But if you actually make a slight effort, it's very easy to integrate.
Yeah, but
you need to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's important. But I mean, you're sketching out the big
Yes.
picture.
That's the
And
job.
I would like to start small and then slowly putting air into the balloon. But hearing that, should air and ocean carriers work more open a dialogue? Because I don't think there's a dialogue right now, is there?
No, there isn't. We work with the European Commission, where we do formally meet and we have formal programs. But it's very much it's really through these organizations, United Nations, through the EC, perhaps the United States Custom and Border Protection. It's organizations like that, but otherwise there are no real, other than friendly. We have, from the start, DCSA and IATA have been very close, in fact.
Yeah, you just told me
But
that.
not because there is any mandate, it's because we have the same problem. And so we have the same problem, we solve the same problem in a very similar way, and that helps everybody.
Yeah, you said that they approached you because they didn't know how to set up an organization.
Well, they were smart. They instead of just starting something, they said, let's ask around. And I'm sure they asked other organizations too. And we could say, well, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. But you could do this, this, and this. And hopefully they saved a bit of time. But the opposite is also true. You know, I go to DCSA and say, what are you doing here? Hope to learn some things that we can innovate as well, because we have a 80-year history almost. We still have processes that were invented 80 years ago, and obviously we need to try and forget those if they don't work. I mean, some work, but some don't.
Yeah, but that's one of the challenges. I mean, you established a standard in 1975, the cargo IMP, which is still mostly used. That was before the invention of the lowercase letters, I think.
Yes, but I'm not talking about the technical standards, because we have kept things like governance. Some of our governance processes are excellent, and we keep those. And some are not. We try and get rid of those.
So, looking back at the, you have a standard, and you have a standard, and there are, I think, multiple standards. And if you look at the picture that I'm showing, it says, well, there's 14 standards. This is crazy. We need one more. And the next is the outcome is we now have 15 standards. Yeah. Is there? I mean, Henning, you said, well, we looked at it and actually we could cover the air processes with us too. And ONE Record goes, well, we can also cover the ocean. Will there be a unification, or do you think it's fine like this, or what's your opinion, Henning?
So we are not working on a unification at this moment.
Good.
We concentrate on what we find, let's say, in that scope, as long as it stays in a container. We actually looked at roll as well, roll on, roll off, but we left that aside, and we rather look for making it very practical and easy to implement. So this is where our focus goes right now. And it starts, I mean, if we take the electronic bill of lading, it starts with influencing legislation. Yeah? And we have just published a legal report about the top 30 countries and what their legislation is, and how to improve, and how we could go, let's say, towards an electronic bill of lading. But also, if you look at just the engineering teams, I mean, that's probably more interesting for you. I'm not sure in how far. I hope you guys are relatively far from the engineering if you're a customer of Riege. But how can we ease it so that people implement the standard in a what we call conformant way? And it's not that we want to charge for certification, but we believe that in the ideal case, if you implement it with, let's say, with MSC, and you want to implement it with CMA or with ONE, you just need to change the credentials and the website, the web address, and then the API works exactly the same way. So this is what we call repeatable interoperability. And this is also almost the hardest thing to get. And people make small mistakes. It's actually about capital or small letters, but it could also be that somebody has a great idea to just add this one optional attribute, and then, yeah, go.
I know.
Yeah, all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. So and we have long debates with our members how we can get there and make a standard that is really practical and ideally implementable in self-service. So without any chat. So just by reading through the documents, through the developer portals, with tools that support you so that you can implement it. That's something we also, I would say we copied from ONE Record.
Where ONE Record has, well, we now actually have software that implements the ONE Record standard, which I was just last Friday. I was at the closing ceremony for the Neon server, and which I think is helping both the airlines as well as the IT providers to actually move forward. And I really applaud that. And I think it's quite hard talking to getting the carriers to agree on one thing, especially if you don't have like a piece of software like this. But we have to come to an end. It's been super, super interesting to talk to you. One of the messages that we sent out last year is that we want to focus more on ocean freight because, I mean, we come from the air freight side. When we were founded in 1985, our tagline, our slogan was know-how in air freight. We've gotten customer feedback in the last year that our ocean part has really, you see that there are results in actually, and while we have not yet implemented the DCSA standards, it's on the roadmap for this year, and we are really looking forward working towards that. The same with ONE Record. We are very, very excited to work with you and also the other carriers. There's a panel discussion tomorrow with Martin Skop from Riege, and he will be joined by Philip from Lufthansa and Klaas from Schenker, talking about a pilot project there and very, very interesting things to hear. Do you have any closing words? Let's start with Henk.
I think it's events like this that make the difference. I don't think it's a technology problem. It hasn't been for a very long time. It's all about the interaction between you asked the question about will there be a new standard? I would have said no, because it is about the ability to speak with other parties and not just your friends, but also the people from other organizations, and there are many. And that shouldn't be so hard, right? And we're doing that, and you're doing that, and so this event is really great for that. So I applaud you for organizing it.
Thank you very much. I also think it's very, very important to have these events also in other scales and in other settings. And we are really trying to put our mark into there. Henning.
Yeah, so it is, we usually say it's about people, process and technology. So it doesn't work without the human part. There's a lot of change management in it. Yeah? I mean, for instance, I learned that IATA found quite early in the process when a definition for when an airplane has arrived at an airport. And you can probably ask around, not many people know it. So it's not when the door is opening or when the IL is connected or whatever. We had the same on our side as well, but then you come with a definition for a vessel. It's arrived alongside pier and the first line secured, because this is when you can start your cargo operations. So pretty similar, I think, for the airlines. It's when the brake has been put under the front wheel.
Chocks on, chocks off.
Chocks on, chocks off. Okay, you know that better than I do. But having that definition where everybody said, yeah, we agree to it, and really changing all the schedules to exactly that, to follow that definition, is a big change management task. And that only works with people explaining it, why it makes sense, and with the collaboration. This is also why I'm happy to be here, and I hope we can have a few nice conversations later tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you for listening.